Hey, in this video I want to show you how to use a GUI compiler. We're going to look at Prepros, but I also mentioned CodeKit as well. But before I do that, I just want to explain what the video is going to actually cover. So essentially, in modern website development technology, we have things like Sass available to us as CSS, and we can also concat and minify JavaScript files, and this is all in an effort to optimize our project so that way when we upload it to the web, when people access the website, we have a minified version of our CSS file, we have a minified version of our JavaScript file. We only have one of each of those files instead of having to link to multiple CSS files. For instance, you only link to one because everything's being compiled and minified into one file. So this reduces HTTP requests, so then in turn it speeds up your website. But the thing is, we need a program to do this for us. We need some application to convert SCSS into traditional CSS. We need a program that will take our JavaScript files and combine them into one JavaScript file and minify it. And so there are several options for us to do that. So right off the bat, I'll show you some of the options you can do using the terminal. So this is Gulp. I won't get into Gulp in this video, but I'll have a link to a separate video that I made all about Gulp if you want to learn how to use it. But this is something you need to work with the terminal, so it's a little more advanced. Grunt is a competitor to Gulp. It's a JavaScript task runner, just like Gulp is. So it's a little more advanced. It's something you need to install and work on your machine and work through the terminal, work with a JavaScript file, working with a npm, things like that. So it's a little bit on the advanced side. So then we have these applications. An alternative to Gulp and Grunt is we have CodeKit is one of them. This is a Mac only application which virtually does everything that Gulp and Grunt does, but you have a GUI. In other words, you have a graphical interface that you can interact with, so it makes it a little bit easier to manage and work with. And then we have another application called Prepros, which is what we're going to dive deeper into in this video. And the reason for that is because this Prepros application is actually available on Mac, Windows, and even Linux. So it's a great application if you're looking for something that'll work on multiple platforms. The Prepros and CodeKit work virtually the same, more or less. There's some nuances between the two, but it's largely the same principles. The one major difference is how Prepros and CodeKit combine JavaScript files. So I'll have a link to the documentation here on the Prepros page on how to combine JavaScript files into one file. And I'll also have a link to this CodeKit video that explains how to do the same thing, but with CodeKit. But that's really largely the main difference that I've seen with Prepros versus CodeKit. Both applications are great. I can't say one is better than the other. They just do things differently. If you are running on a Windows machine, you'll pretty much have to get Prepros. If you're running on a Mac, I would consider CodeKit. They're both relatively priced the same. This one, CodeKit, is $34, whereas Prepros is $29. So they're about the same. You could both of them have, I believe, a trial. You could download the app and use it for a short period just to see if you like it, and if you do like it, you can go ahead and purchase it. I would say the main difference is as you get more comfortable with compiling your files, is that although CodeKit and Prepros are great, there is a speed limitation. So you'll see over time that compiling does take some time. You'll hit that save button, the files will start to compile. It'll be a few seconds, and although a few seconds that doesn't sound like much, but when you start working on large files when you're compiling perhaps dozens of different files, that time starts to add up. And at that time you'll probably start to look into things like Gulp or Grunt, for example, to speed up your production, things like that. But to get started, CodeKit and Prepros are fantastic. They're great for general small projects, I would say, just to get you going. If you need to build like a portfolio website, any type of website, this is a great solution for that. I would say once you get into larger websites where you do have dozens and dozens of files, definitely consider jumping into Go Open Grunt. But to get started, I think Prepros and CodeKit do a great job to get you to understand how this system works, how to minify and optimize your files, and things like that. Okay, so let's get started. So in this video, I'm going to be using HTML5 boilerplate. So I'll have a link to this as well in the notes below. So essentially, go ahead and go to HTML5boilerplate.com, click on Get a Custom Build. When you land here, you can click on this classic button here, and all we're going to need is just the basics here. So I'm going to uncheck everything here. So we just need no template, modernizer, and minify jQuery. Click that downloaded button, and you should be good to go. And once you have that folder downloaded, I went ahead and renamed mine to project, but you can name the project file anything you like. So in here, you just get the basic HTML5 boilerplate files. You get the index.html, you get your JavaScript folder. There's a vendor folder here. What I'm going to do is actually create another folder in here. So go ahead and do that if you want to follow along. And we'll call this one plugins. Get that going. Cool. And inside our CSS folder, you see we have main.css, we have normalized, and we have a minified version of normalized. I'm going to go ahead and delete this minified version because we're going to be doing that ourselves with Prepros. Okay, so and before I even proceed, just to let you know, go ahead and if you want to follow along, go ahead and download Prepros, have it installed, and then when you launch it, it'll look like this. And this is the trial version. So if you want to go and register if you purchase it, you can definitely welcome to do that. But you can't use it for free just to get started. So this is what it looks like before I actually included the project. So we'll get to that in a second. Going back to the project here. So we've deleted that normalized minified version, which is great. I'm going to copy these two files. So copy that, come back in here, make a new file, or the new folder called SCSS. I'm going to paste these into here. Oops. Paste that right there. Perfect. And what I'm going to do is rename these to Sass, SCSS. So go ahead and click yes when you get that prompt. If you do, just a warning, it tells you that the files may become unusable because Windows is just not familiar with the extension .scss. Okay, so these are now Sass files, if you will. Even though there's no actual Sass code in there, these are Sass files, meaning that we can start to use Prepros to compile these and combine them into one file. So we're going to do the CSS Sass stuff first, and then we'll jump into JavaScript after that. So all we've done is we've created our we created a plugins folder inside our JavaScript folder, just a blank, there's nothing in there. And we've gone into Sass, rather the CSS folder. We deleted the minified version of normalized. We no longer need these versions here, so we can feel free to delete that. So in our CSS folder, there should be nothing there. In our Sass folder, the SCSS folder, we have main.scss, which we renamed our main.css from, and we have normalized.scss. Again, none of these actually have Sass code in them, but they use the extension .scss so that we can compile and concatenate them into one file. So okay, perfect. So that's all good to go. So go ahead and open this project in your text editor of choice. I'm going to be using Sublime Text right here. So now, before we can start including our code, we need to drop this project folder inside Prepros so that Prepros can start to view it. So let's go ahead and do that now. So open up your Prepros application. Go ahead and drag the folder project into the application, Prepros. This way you can look at all the files. It can basically see all the files you're doing. It's going to try to minify these and rather output them and process them into the CSS folder here automatically. We don't want it to do that, so let's go ahead and address that right now. So don't do anything just yet in this application. All you do is just drag this folder into it so that it's watching it. Once you do that, head on over to your SCSS folder inside your text editor, create a new file. I'm going to call this one styles.scss. And in here we're going to be using the @import. So this is a Sass command or functionality, if you will. So @import, but first we want to do is import the normalized file. So normalized.scss, because this is relative, it's in the same folder, so you could just put the name of the file here because styles is here and normalized is in the same folder. Perfect. And then let's do another @import. We want to do our main.scss. Perfect. So what we've done now, if we come back to, media expression must begin with, get a little bit of an error. So make sure to put a semicolon here as well. So you should have these two lines right here. Okay, perfect. So now if we go back to Prepros, and if you open the SCSS folder, you'll see that your file, the one we just created over here, is not visible here. So what we need to do is click on this little icon here to the right of your project folder, and you'll see a little button here that says refresh. So go ahead and click refresh, and you'll see that your new file is now here. So Prepros is now aware of it. If you look into the settings here, if you click on these files here, you'll see that these are not imported files. But if you click over here, you'll see where the output path. So Prepros automatically figured out the best place to put this process file is going to be inside the CSS folder, inside styles.css. It's going to auto compile, meaning that whenever you hit that save button, it's going to automatically process. So if you're, and I'll demonstrate this in a little bit, you can check off source map if you like. So source map is basically when you are troubleshooting your project inside, for instance, Chrome, and you're using the inspector and you're looking at certain properties of a tag, you'll see where those styles are actually, what actual file is coming from, you know, if the error is coming from this particular file or this particular file. And the reason why that's important is because if we look at our process version of our style.css here, you'll see that everything's been combined into one. In fact, what I'm going to do right now, come back into here, I'm going to check off this minify CSS file, click process file, which is going to force process it. If we come back over here, you'll see that if I just enable word wrap here, you'll see that all the files has been combined and minified together. So we have normalized here at the top, and we have our main.css here below it. So if you look back over here, here's just the order that we've established inside our styles.css folder, rather that styles.scss folder. So essentially what's happening is that we have these two files being combined into styles.scss, then being moved into the CSS folder, and everything gets minified and combined into one file. And the reason why this is important is when we go back to index.html, you'll see that we have two requests for two different files. We have one request for normalize and another request for our main.css, which is no good. So we have multiple HTTP requests. Conceivably, you'll have multiple CSS files. So wouldn't it be great if you can combine them all into one? Well, this is exactly what we did here. So we no longer need this request anymore. We can erase that. We just need to update this to styles.scss. Perfect. And so what this is now doing for us is that this is pointing to our one file that contains all our CSS, from normalize, from main.scss, things like that. So it's all combined into one. So if you have more Sass files inside the SCSS folder here, you can combine them all into one. So if you turn on this source map option when you troubleshoot, because you're only going to be looking at one file now. So on the live website, your live website's only pulling up one .css file. So this makes it difficult to troubleshoot because you don't know where these styles are coming from, which file, because they're all lumped into one. So if you enable source map, you'll be able to do that for you, because in the inspector it'll tell you here's this style and it's coming from this particular file, etc., etc. So that's what that's all about. Okay, so now that we have our styles minified, so how do we preview this, and how do we use the auto refresh capability of Prepros, which is a really cool option. So in here inside Prepros, there's a little icon that looks like a globe. If you click on that, you'll get the open in preview. So this is running off the Prepros server, if you will. So this is really great, because now what you can do is hop back into main.scss. Let's do a bit of Sass. So let's create a variable red, just call it red color. Let's target the body tag, background, and we'll use the variable red. So as soon as you say that, you'll see automatically this gets refreshed. So whatever styles you include here, you click that save button, Prepros will see that you hit the save button, and it will automatically apply the styles and refresh this page automatically. So if you were to change this to green, for instance, save it, now it's green. So if you were to, on the flip side, if you were to take this file and just open it in a browser, This is now just running off your local machine. So if you were to do that and you come back over here, change this back to red, save it, no refresh here at all. So remember to do that. So open up the Prepros button, hit that globe icon so you're previewing this in your server, localhost :7879, so that way you could do stuff like this. Okay, pretty cool. Really helpful to get your project done much quicker. Hit the save button and everything gets updated automatically. You're good to go, and you can work with Sass. So what Prepros is actually doing here, it's combining the files, it's converting Sass into CSS, and it's moving everything into styles.css. Perfect. So now we just have one request for that. Great. So now let's do the same thing for JavaScript. So JavaScript, the way you compile JavaScript with Prepros is a little bit different than you do with CodeKit. There is just some code you have to do. It's very similar to the way we just did Sass in terms of how we combine files, whereas CodeKit has a more of a GUI interface for that, so you can kind of drag files into a special area to link them here. And I'll have a link to this video in the notes below, so if you are working with CodeKit, you can also do the same thing there in terms of combining them into one file. So again, the benefit of combining files into one file is that you only have one request, and you don't have to link to multiple files, things like that. You just control everything from your text editor. So let's go ahead and close these Sass files here. Inside our JavaScript folder, we have that plugins folder which we made earlier. I'm going to make a new file in here. We're going to call this file plugin1.js. Let's give it a variable a, and we'll just do that just so we have some JavaScript in here. Let's do another plugin here. Save this. We'll call this plugin2.js. Perfect. And we'll variable b something else. Oh, put that semicolon back here. Perfect. So what we want to do now, we have these two plugins. So traditionally, if you were using, let's say, a jQuery plugin, you might start including links over here, so you end up having 3, 4, 5, if not more, separate links to different JavaScript files, things like that. So that's, again, no good, because now you're having multiple HTTP requests. It slows down the browser, rather it slows the website down when people try to load it, and it makes it difficult for you to keep things organized because now you have these links everywhere, so it gets a little messy. So, and alternatively, what you can do is head on over to your main.js file. This is going to be your main JavaScript file, and what we can do in here is we can prepend our plugins right here at the top, meaning that if we take these two files here, so I'm going to copy this from the documentation page here, copy that, paste it into here. So these look like just basically notes. So this is something Prepros looks for, and so if it finds it, it goes and concatenates this. So the first thing we want to append is we want to go into the plugins folder and append the plugin1.js. So let's go ahead and do that now. So go into the plugin folder, plugin1.js. Same thing here. Go into the plugin folder, plugin2.js. And if you had a third file, go ahead and do that as well. So we save that, and we head back over to our Prepros application. I'm going to go ahead and click this little icon here, refresh it, make sure we have the latest files here. Open this up. Here's our main.js. We'll see that this is getting outputted inside the JavaScript folder, JS main-dist for distribution. We can do auto compile, meaning that anytime I hit that save button, Prepros will process it and combine those two plugin files. And let's go ahead and do that as well. We also want to uglify and mangle, so this is a way of reducing the file size of JavaScript. It minifies the file for us. So let's go ahead and leave that checked off. Go ahead and process this. And let's see, looks like maybe we have a typo somewhere. Let's take a look. So in here I put plugin, so this should actually be plugins. That's the folder name here, so make sure to correct that on your end if you also have that typo. Perfect. So as soon as I hit that save button, the Prepros goes into work and starts combining these files into one. So if I come back here, refresh this here, you'll see that we have our main-dist file. So if we access that file in Sublime Text, you'll see both of our files have been combined. So that way we can include our other console log, for instance, If we want to log that variable, we can do that as well, things like that. And so if we come back into our main dash, you'll see that everything's been concatenated together. So this one here is being appended. So if we wanted to prepend it, we can also do that here. So there's an option here for that as well. So we can change this to prepend. Oops. There we go. Prepend. Save that, come back in here, you'll see that it's been swapped. So it's very convenient for you to sort of combine the two files together. And just one other note, and just because we have these files inside the plugins folder doesn't mean we have to keep all our files, our JavaScript files, inside the plugins folder. Let's go ahead and put jQuery into the mix here. So above here, I'm going to add one more line, add prepros -prepend. And what I want to do is go inside the vendor folder this time, and I want to prepend the jQuery file. So jQuery-1-11-2.min.js, save that, and we come back into here. There it goes, and now we have our jQuery plugin at the top now, and then we have our code down here below. Here it is right here. So now they're combined into one. So the last thing you'll have to do is jump back into index.html and update your link to your JavaScript file. So in fact, since we went ahead and combined jQuery, we don't need this portion here as well. So we get rid of that because that code was calling for a jQuery, but now we have it combined into one file. So let's go ahead and update our link to our JavaScript file. So in our case, it's main-dist for distribution. Save that. Come back into our project here on the server here, refresh the page, make sure we have everything up to date. If we look at our source here, you'll see we just have one link to our JavaScript file, and we have one link to our styles.css file. So this is nicely minified, and you should be good to go. And remember, Prepros, because Prepros is in our project and we're working off the server, any changes that we do here with our JavaScript, any changes that we do here inside our let's see, going back to the Sass, inside our main.css for instance, everything is being watched. So anytime you hit that save button, Prepros will process it and it will save it for you automatically. You have options for all the files that are being combined. So there's main.js, you can auto compile it, you can concat, source map, you have all these options for the files that you're processing. Just bear in mind that in your project, when you're working here, you never want to edit the processed files, meaning that the styles.scss, go ahead and edit that to your heart's desire, but never go into your CSS file here, the styles.css file, and make changes there, because anytime you make changes here, it'll override those changes. So the idea here is that you never touch the main-distribution.js file, and you never touch the styles.css file. So those are the files that are getting overridden every time you work with your working files right over here. So just bear that in mind. So remember, CodeKit does work the same way, very similar. You drag your project folder into CodeKit. It's going to automatically try to detect which files need to be processed. You control your combining files by, this is doing it the Sass way, by using the @import command. In CodeKit, the way it combines JavaScript is differently, so definitely check out that video. But in Prepros, this is how it does it. Very simple, and you should be good to go there as well. So the idea here is you're able to process Sass into traditional CSS, and you're now able to process multiple JavaScript files into one file. And lastly, you're able to see your changes being made on your local browser here, your local machine. Just by hitting that save button, everything happens automatically. The browser automatically refreshes, and you're good to go. So it's a real a great way to optimize your project files for your website.